podcast from Slasher Sports and from Jace from the Couch. We're going to bring you a fantastic episode number 11. And if you notice in our intro, we no longer have off-season in there. It's baseball is all the time for you, and that's exactly what we're going to give you at the OK Baseball Podcast because we are no longer in the off-season. If you haven't paid attention, or if you've lived under a rock for the last few days, which I feel like I might actually have been, to be completely honest, with all this move stuff going on. Pitchers and catchers reported on Monday, and it is a beautiful time. Now that the Super Bowl is over, it is baseball season officially in this household, as it is always baseball season for me, to be completely honest. But Shaun, welcome into the show. We are finally officially in baseball season.
Thank God, eh? Like, I don't know about, wow, my Canadian personality just popped out of it.
I think you just gave us a couple of ratings to just know that this is a friendly podcast now.
Oh, man, what a bunch of hosers, eh? Anyway, no, it's awesome. Football's done. And I'm one of those people who, I tried to get into football this year, and I just couldn't do it. I was too busy dreaming about spring training and now the pictures and little video clips of guys taking batting practice and some soft toss and all that stuff. It's all trickling in, and it's glorious, and I'm so excited.
Yeah, this is my favorite time of the year, getting all excited for the season to start. I was listening to Sirius XM radio and MLB channel 89, of course. That's where it always sticks on my truck when I'm driving around. But there was a guy on there, and he was talking about how excited he was. And then he said, well, I'll get bored of it sooner or later. You don't get bored with baseball. Get out of here. And if you do, you might want to go find a new channel to be worried about maybe giving your views. But we have plenty of views to give you tonight on this show. We're going to start off with our fantastic coast to coast. We're going to go across the league east to west, hit up every division, and give you 6 stories you should be paying attention to this week. A lot of them are based on spring training. And then just a couple other storylines we found quite interesting. And then if you paid attention to last week's show, we had our consensus first annual OBP top 10 hitters right now. Well, this week we're going to give you the first annual OBP top 10 pitchers going into 2023. It's going to be a fun-filled show. Hope you tag along. If you have any questions or if you think that our list is completely wrong, go ahead, get us a comment in our YouTube if you're watching later on in the show, or just hit us up live. We'd be more than happy to join in that conversation. You ready for this, Shaun? You ready for Coast to Coast?
Let's do it.
All right. All right, coast to coast. We're starting off with the AL East in this one, and we're going to talk about the Boston Red Sox. Last year, in 2022, the Boston Red Sox were the basement Boston Red Sox in that division, and we are going to really kind of talk about that conversation this one. Utility player Enrique Hernandez went on the record and stated how the frustration of this team is going. I think frustration is a good word you could put in this one. He talked about how this team will not accept finishing in last place again. He said, quote, I don't think this is an organization that should settle for last place. We are an organization that should be competing year in and year out, and we need to find a way to get back into that winning mentality. He sounds super frustrated. Now, this is obviously when you let players like JD Martinez go, Xander Bogaerts. We definitely can't forget about Xander Bogaerts. That is a huge piece. Yes, they did sign Rafael Devers, although you and I both agree that was a must happen. So Fenway Park did not burn down in the wintertime and be used as lumber. Now, however, there are a few other people that came in, some strong bullpen pieces. Obviously, Justin Turner, Kenley Jansen came in for the bullpen. Justin Turner, both those coming over from the Dodgers to Boston. That doesn't seem like enough, really, to be completely honest, to get out of the basement of the AL East. Do you feel like his thoughts are warranted? Would you be frustrated if you were a veteran like Hernandez? What's your thoughts here, Shaun?
Man, spring training just started.
Yeah.
And everybody around baseball is, I'm so excited, and we've got a shot, and we've got a great group of guys. And he could have said all of that, but instead he decided to go a different way. And you know what? Okay. I mean, he's not wrong. I totally understand where he's coming from. We're talking about a franchise like the Boston Red Sox, who you don't expect to see them down in the basement year after year. And we may be looking at that this year, 2 years in a row in the basement. And I get it. I get his frustration. It's just, to me, it seems oddly timed. Maybe say it, get it out of the way before everybody gets back to camp. I don't know. But oddly timed, but also what does he hope to accomplish at that point? I mean, at this point, you're the guy people may look to be a leader, and that's the first thing out of your mouth this spring. That's unfortunate. And it's not like you're like an MVP candidate where you have kind of, because some guys get a longer leash to say certain things. If a Bryce Harper's coming out and saying something like that, or Mookie Betts, or there's a list of them. Hernandez is not on that list. So it strikes me as odd.
With all the players leaving Boston, like Martinez, like Xander Bogaerts, it seems like they're going to struggle for maybe this season, maybe a couple other seasons on, and not just on the field, but finding that leadership. And we're looking at Hernandez right now as a possibility for one of those players to be in that leadership role. And it seems like, hey, maybe he's given this tough love right off the bat. Maybe this is what the fans want to hear. They don't want to hear it be sugar-coated, or they don't want the players to feel like they are not getting the right kind of tools into it. It's obvious. And I feel like you can put this into perspective any way you want to look at it, Shaun, but Boston did not do what they needed to do to improve from last season's roster. And if you look at every other team in their division, every other team did at least something to improve in the offseason, or didn't have to because they're in a great spot moving forward with their young core or whatever the fact may be. Boston did not do that. If you look at everybody else's trajectory in the AL East, Boston's is the only one in my mind that is going significantly down or staying static compared to last season. I will say Tampa, in my opinion, probably has dropped down a little bit, but not enough to put Boston out of the last place in the East. Based on early projections, and I know this is super early, we haven't even played a spring training game yet. We're still 9 days out from that. Boston is only expected to win 82 wins. And 82 wins will probably be last place in the AL East. All right, we got a comment in from Derpy Entertainment that says Red Sox may finish last behind Baltimore. I completely agree. I think Baltimore is going to be battling for third place. I really do. I don't think it's going to be a fourth place guarantee for Baltimore. I think Baltimore is my American League dark horse team this year. If you're going to pick a team that did not make the playoffs last year, we've gone 40 something years where there's a new playoff team into MLB every year, right? So compared to last year, at least one. And Baltimore is mine for the American League. If you want to hear my National League, Arizona Diamondbacks or Texas Rangers. How about that? All right, let's move on. Let's go to the National League East, and let's talk about another team that's in the basement. I mean, I guess we're talking about the East basement here, and let's talk about the Washington Nationals. I like this story here. And I think the storyline with the Washington Nationals, that this could be a very fun storyline to pay attention to in the spring, and that's the third base role. Who will start? Well, it'll be by platoon. This will be something to really pay attention to. They go and get Jeimer Candelario, who was signed in November to Washington after being with Detroit for a pretty long time. I mean, he played most of his 7-year career in Detroit, and he was a solidified player. I mean, there's been some times where Candelario, you could add as a possibility as a top 10 player at his position. Now, you also have this guy in Carter Kieboom, who before he got injured was this huge breakout prospect in AAA. Super excited to see him. Everybody was so pumped. I was so pumped. Right after the World Series win in 2019, they were talking about how this guy was going to be the next that's coming for Washington. I made him happy, made him okay with being able to let Anthony Rendon walk, but he has an injury, had to get Tommy John surgery, sidelined him for the entire 22 season. He's now 25 years old, and he's only played 91 games at third base for the Washington Nationals. There's a couple other prospects that could be in there. Of course, another veteran utility player in Vargas as well. There's this really is a 4-player battle in my mind, but I have to give the nod to Candelario. What's your thoughts, Shaun, on this third base role for the Nationals?
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. Absolutely. When at this point, I don't know that the Nationals know what they're going to get from Kieboom this coming season. And Candelario had a bit of a down season last year, only 80 runs created plus, which is a massive dip from his 140 in 2020, which, I get it's only a short season, but even 2021 full season, 120 weighted runs created plus. So that's a pretty big drop off. And his on base percentage went all the way down to 272 in Candelario. So, I mean, if you're the Nationals, I think you kind of, you agree to a $5 million deal with them in the hopes that you have somebody to fill in should Keebum not be able to live up to, I don't know, the hype, I guess, because I feel like we've been hearing about him forever. And so I don't know that hype is the right word, but man, he's not been able to find that success just yet. And of course, only 62 games last year. So that'll be the first thing. He's got to be healthy. And when he's ready, I think he's going to have, an uphill battle to show that he's their everyday third baseman.
Yeah. Now, I think Carter would be a fantastic piece if he could figure it out and get it together. My baseball card collection would thank that as well, because I have a lot of his rookie cards. I'd love to see that stock rise. I think that is the case. I think it's Candelario's job. I think K-Boom is going to battle for it, especially in spring training. But you got to think that a veteran like Jamier has it in his mind that he wanted to get a big everyday role, if you will, at that hat corner position, especially going to a team like Washington where they're not going to compete. Now, obviously, he came from Detroit where they're not competing either, or at least we thought they were going to possibly, but they didn't as well. There's also one other player in this mix, and that's a prospect, Jake Alou. He made a huge case last year to maybe make some debut into the majors, what he did in AAA. He had a huge AAA breakout, and I do think that we are going to see him in the majors at some point. I don't think he's going to be a opening day kind of bid. I think you're going to let him marinate a little more because you have guys like K-Boom, Candelario, and Vargas, so you don't really have to make that happen. But hopefully one of those guys like Candelario or Vargas especially can work out. Washington can flip them, and they can find a way to bring Alou up into the mix. I think that would be a perfect situation, a storybook ending for Washington this year. That's where Washington is going to win this season. It's not going to be in the record books. It's not going to be in the win standing column. It's going to be, can they make the proper moves to solidify themselves moving forward in arguably one of the toughest divisions in baseball?
Yeah, I think that Alou has a bit of a shot here in spring training, right? Because Kieboom isn't back until at least May with his Tommy John, if I'm not mistaken. So, and that's probably at the earliest. So I think he's got some time to grab some attention and all of that. But I think, at the end of the day, if we see him, I think he would have to. If we see him early in the season, he would have had a monster spring, and then kind of force their hand. But I think and then I think what'll happen is they'll kind of keep him down and let him marinate, as you said. And then when Kieboom comes back, if he's still struggling, and maybe Alou has had a few months to kind of continue his progression, then maybe. Just maybe then we'll see him come up. But I really think it all depends on the health of Kieboom. It's a fascinating story, right? Because on the one hand, you've got the time to see what Alou can do, but on the other hand, there isn't necessarily a perfect fit for him. So it'll be interesting to see, but it all hinges on the bounce back from Kieboom and whether or not that even will happen.
Yeah, with the prospects coming into play, if you haven't paid attention to the prospects in years past, make sure you do that this year. If you get MLB TV, the package, you also get the minor league package this year, one of those new updates that came out just recently in the owners' meetings. That is a fantastic deal. Get more of that minor league baseball in you because, I mean, you're good. That's the players of the future. That's exactly what we want to see. All right, let's move on to the Central Division, moving right along with coast to coast here. We just talked about a player who struggled in Washington with K-Boom. Let's talk about a player who did struggle 100% in his rookie year in 2022. We're going to go to the Detroit Tigers. We're going to talk about Spencer Torkelson. Only batted .203, 16 doubles, a triple, and only 8 home runs. And he struck out almost 100 times, 99 times. He went up and down from major leagues back down to AAA Toledo. He's quoted that he feels good, ready for spring training this season, and talks about how it wasn't easy. Obviously, how he didn't draw. That's not how it was drawn up in the 2022 season. Of course, everybody thought he was going to be fantastic. He was picked number 1 in the 2020 draft. He was coming into the season as one of the top prospects. I had huge hopes for Spencer Torkelson and Riley Green. I thought Torkelson was going to be the better guy out of that. Seems like it's the other way around so far. Riley Green's doing pretty good. But this Detroit team really needs Spencer Torkelson to come back. Now, obviously, we had the rookie slump. Don't need anything like a sophomore slump because I don't think it can get much worse for what Spencer Torkelson did. He's got to step it up and he's got to get himself ready to go. What's your thoughts about Spencer Torkelson? Do you think he still has potential to be what everyone thinks he can be and the reason why Detroit drafted him number 1 overall in 2020?
Oh, absolutely. Anybody who's giving up on him is kind of needs to give their head a shake. I mean, 2021, his first season of pro ball, and he's lit up over 3 levels, high A, double A, and triple A, to the tune of 30 home runs, an OPS of 935. Like that doesn't happen by accident, especially over 3 levels, right? So, to me, I think Spencer Torkelson. I'm not going to be a fan of that name. I got to be honest. Does not exactly roll off the tongue. So we need to find him a nickname. Let's see.
Torque bombs, hopefully. And that's what my t-shirt says. Yes, I do have a Spencer Torkelson t-shirt, but I had to hide it in the back of my closet last year because it just wasn't working out. That also got demoted to AAA.
Right. His full name is Enox. His middle name, Enox. I'm going with that. He knocks in some runs, he does. Yeah, and I think, but he's got all the power in the world, right? So how do you give up on that? And I don't think anybody in their right mind is giving up on that. So what they're looking for, he's saying the right things, and you mentioned that Enrique Hernandez may want to take a cue out of the kid's book and figure out how to talk at the beginning of spring training. But I'm excited for him to get his, another shot. Like Detroit, he's going to have all the time in the world to figure it out because the expectations aren't all that high in Detroit, right? So he's going to have a long leash. And as you said, it cannot get worse. It can't.
Yes. So
I think we're going to see a bit of a different season, especially given that, like Detroit, what else do they have to focus on, right? They want to get this guy right. So it'll be a good season for him to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Detroit needs to build that core. Riley Green, Spencer Torkelson, just to name a few. Obviously, they have some great early young pitchers. Get that in the mix. Detroit's got a lot of work to do. That'll be a fun storyline to pay attention to all year. Enoch, as you mentioned earlier, he set some home run records at Arizona State. And if you look back at some of the players who also played at Arizona State, you would be in complete awe. Go ahead and give yourself a Google on that one when you can. Spencer Torkelson, just like you said, he was drafted as a power hitter. He played in the minors, fantastic as a power hitter. That will translate to the major league game. It will happen. We are going to see him as one of those. I'll maybe say it now. He will be a premier power hitter in the league this year. It will happen. Now, I know the Tigers are moving center field up by, I think, 10 feet, lowering the field a little bit as well. That could help as well. Maybe that'll help his numbers a little bit. Comerica is not an easy ballpark to hit home runs out of. Let's be honest. I think it's only, the second deepest behind Coors Field. So that could help, but I don't think it's going to change that much. Regardless, Spencer Torkelson is going to have a great season in 2023. Mark it down, put it down as one of our OBP hot takes, if you want to call it that, but it's going to be a guarantee. I think I just put a Joe Namath quote in there as well. All right, let's move on to the NL Central, and let's talk about the Pittsburgh Pirates. We got a lot of fun teams in this one today. We're talking about some of the teams that could be seen as bottom teams. But the Pittsburgh Pirates are a very interesting one because they did make some additions this year. It's something we have not seen in quite some time. But now there's this big question on, will the major subtraction actually happen all offseason long? I mean, I think we've heard it even before the offseason started. Brian Reynolds says he wants out. I don't know if it's going to happen, though. It seems like we've seen many other trades happen this season. We've seen a whole bunch of free agents move. There are still people who would love to have a Brian Reynolds on their squad, but it has yet to happen. I guess the price they're asking, I have heard is that it is in the range of a Juan Soto type deal for Brian Reynolds. Now, he does have some pretty interesting numbers. It's not Juan Soto numbers, but he does have some that could back that up. Pittsburgh obviously is asking a little too much in that case, and that's why he's still sitting around. I'm interested if he's going to be 100% ready to be a Pittsburgh Pirate. And that's why I started looking around. Will he be ready? Well, that's exactly what he quoted earlier on as soon as spring training started. He quotes, "I'm always going to be where my feet are at." He said, "I'm here right now, so I'm locked in 100% Pirates, whatever that takes." That sounds like kind of a walk around to saying, "Hey, I'm going to be a professional while I'm here." It still sounds like he wants out, though, Shaun. Read the tea leaves. What do you think?
Once again, Enrique Hernandez, pay attention. That's exactly what you say. Like, come on. Anyway, it's an interesting story, right? Because of the request for a trade, or however that played out. We know they've been trying to trade him all winter, clearly asking for too much. I'm surprised, in all honesty, I'm surprised they didn't find a taker, given just how many trades happened and the cost for a hitter like Brian Reynolds. But there he is, still in Pittsburgh, ready to be a Pirate. Good for him. I don't think this is going to be tough. I don't think he gets traded during spring training, maybe at the trade deadline. But even then, I think, and somebody who's watching out there, hit me up on Twitter at DoyleJFTC or in the comment section of this video. I'm pretty sure I read within the last couple of days that the Pirates were even, exploring an extension. So I don't think he gets traded. However, Pittsburgh is going to have to do a lot of convincing, I think, to get him to sign on that dotted line, because they're starting to head to the right direction, but they're not there yet. And Brian Reynolds, looking at 28 years old, he'll be a free agent in 2026. So they still have time with him, time to impress him, time to move forward in the right direction. And so maybe, just maybe, he could stay put in Pittsburgh, and all of this was a Shakespeare Much Ado About Nothing.
After so many years of trading your great players for prospects and just keep building and building and building and getting jokes saying that Pittsburgh is the AAA team of the Yankees or AAA team of whatever. I mean, how many times have we've heard that conversation? An extension for Brian Reynolds would change that narrative, at least for this season. We've already seen them making some free agent deals. I would think completely different against this Pittsburgh Pirates organization if that extension happened, especially if it took away some of their arbitration numbers and moved into some free agent years. He was quoted that says his number one priority would be to sign an extension in Pittsburgh, but I want it to be a fair deal for both sides. Not a crazy player, not a crazy team deal. That has always been my number one priority. Interesting. I think that is very interesting. I think Brian Reynolds would be fantastic if he stayed in Pittsburgh for the rest of his career. I would love it. What I find interesting as well is if he does stay, it will complete the Andrew McCutchen circle, because he was traded in the Andrew McCutchen trade. He was brought over to Pittsburgh when Andrew McCutchen was traded to San Francisco. Now Andrew McCutchen's back. They both get to play in the same team. I mean, McCutchen's not the same player that he used to be. That's always going to help fill the stands a little bit, and hopefully to see Brian Reynolds do fantastic, maybe get him back to an all-star game for the Pittsburgh Pirates, Shaun.
Oh yeah, he'll be an all-star, simply by process of elimination, I think, on that Pirates team. However, I want to get back to this extension, because that's what's fascinating to me with this whole Brian Reynolds thing, is they're on the precipice here of making a decision either way, to trade him, to maybe take less than they would hoped, or extend him, and those are two very opposite ends of that spectrum, right? It'll be interesting though, because Pittsburgh is not traditionally one of those big spending teams, and it could take quite a bit to convince Brian Reynolds to not test free agency. So maybe that will be the indicator. If he is traded, maybe there just wasn't an extension that both sides could be happy with. And if he doesn't get traded, is it because an extension is in the horizons? It's just a fascinating storyline. But regardless, the Pirates have a gem here, and you know what? Maybe I can't really blame them for asking for the moon, because if you're gonna get rid of a Brian Reynolds, you better make sure that return is going to set you up for quite a few years.
Yeah, 27 home runs last year, 24 in 2021 when he hit 302 and was an all-star in 2021. The last two seasons have been immaculate for Brian Reynolds. One last question here, and I know it's kind of rounding it all together, but can you see Pittsburgh actually giving Brian Reynolds a big time extension to keep him in Pittsburgh for the foreseeable future. The Pittsburgh Pirates, this is the team I'm talking about here, the team
Right.
that we have not seen do an extension for money in a very long time. They usually trade their expiring contracts away. Brian Reynolds, is he the game changer for this organization?
Is he the game changer? Sure. Will he be the one who changes the narrative about their spending? It's tough to see. It's tough to see that Pittsburgh is going to cough up. Like we're looking at a 28-year-old who will be a free agent in 2026. So he'll be 31. It could take an extra 4 years past that free agent mark. It could take maybe 5 years. I want them to extend him. I so badly want the Pirates to extend Brian Reynolds for the fans of Pittsburgh, so they get to keep one of their stars. I would be surprised if they cough up the 9 figures that it'll take. So if you put a gun to my head, am I making a decision? I don't see him being extended. However, I want so badly to be wrong.
Yep, I'm with you 100%. I got to see it to believe it. Until then, the Pirates will still be the Pirates in my mind. All right, we got Drixley joining the show, says, hey, OBP, what's going on? Welcome in. I'm glad to see we got some viewers tonight. So thank you. Just keep chiming in your comments as we continue here at Coast to Coast. We're going to continue on afterwards with our top 10 pitchers going into 2023. Let's move to the West Coast. The Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim is who we're going to talk about for the AL West. And you brought an interesting topic my way today, talking from MLB Trade Rumors brought out this thing. Nick Deeds had an interesting article talking about the Angels looking to increase their workload for the top starters. Now, Angels manager Bill Nevins was talking to reporters, there were pitchers and catchers reported, and he talked about how he wants some of their top end guys such as Shohei Ohtani to get more in the mix and more action on the mound and having that quote rigid 6-man rotation. I think it's pretty interesting. Obviously, Ohtani, we already see him as a two-way player. Nevin wants to give him even more work. Now, he is arguably the best player in all of baseball because what he does on both sides of the baseball. However, when is it too much for this guy? Or is too much not an answer? It's an interesting concept, especially when you're in a free agent year like Ohtani is going to be. How far do you push that button? And of course, the rest of that rotation. Shaun, what's your thoughts on this?
It's a fascinating comment to come out and say, given the state of the Angels rotation. If you want to talk about increasing their workload, let's just back that truck up and can they even handle the 6-man rotation workload? You've got Patrick Sandoval, who 14 games in 2021, Noah Syndergaard, who has a long list of not being healthy. So to me, if you want to talk about workload for your pitchers, let's just get them through a full season first. And as far as adding Shohei Ohtani into that, you don't often hear the workhorse of the team, and I'm going to throw him in there because he plays both sides of the ball, so he plays more than anybody in baseball. To me, asking him to do even more is what are you doing? You would think it would be the other way around. Everybody but Shohei Ohtani, we need you to pitch more. Shohei, you just keep doing you, bud. Keep you happy so that you stay here in Anaheim for a very long time. But to ask him to do more than he's already done, that to me is very interesting. And maybe this will be the test to find out if he really was made in a lab somewhere, just to see if he can handle that. That would be interesting to see. But to me, it's just an odd comment when your pitchers, your rotation isn't all that reliable to begin with.
Yeah, I'm completely with you, and I'm kind of stunned on that. Obviously, we have Ohtani. We know what's going to happen with that. As you mentioned, Syndergaard, he had his ups and downs last season. He got traded to Philly. Now he's with the Dodgers, a crosstown team. They did bring in, from the Dodgers, they did bring in Tyler Anderson, who did throw 178 innings last year. So if you're trying to make your workload a little bit more top heavy, you can go Ohtani, Anderson. Hopefully you can get 150 plus from both of them. If they're healthy, that might help the entire conversation alone. Just with those two, obviously, Red Detmers can play as well. But then you talk about guys like Griffin Canning, who yes looks healthy this year, but after a long layoff, has only pitched less or hasn't pitched more than 100 innings in one season. So there's just a lot of question marks for this Angels team on the rotation if they can be this workhorse kind of style. I just can't see it. I think that they're going to maybe try this structure initial, and then as soon as one injury hits, they're going to have to go back right away to the 6-man rotation or whatever this swingman style they're thinking about. But I don't think you're going to see guys that at the top of this rotation have a plethora or an extensive amount of innings compared to what they had last season.
Right, and we're looking at a rotation. Suarez and Detmers both projected at 120 innings, up to 140 maybe. Yeah, I just don't see how they're going to expect more. Let's get you let's get you consistent first. Then we can have that more conversation. To me, it's just an odd comment.
Obviously, you got Shohei Ohtani as your ace. He also plays two-way player and is a fantastic bat. Before we head off this conversation, we have to ask the question. This season, a contract year. Everybody's talking about how they want to make sure he stays as an Angel. Mike Trout came out saying he'll do anything it takes to make sure he stays with the Angels. Shohei Ohtani, does this kind of this performance, this behavior by Phil Nevin saying, hey, we want you to pitch more. Do you think this is something that Ohtani wants, or is this something that might make him bat less? Or is this something that we probably shouldn't pay attention to too closely?
I'm not sure right now where we are in spring training just starting. I don't know that it's not something that we should be looking and checking every single day. However, it will be interesting to follow as the season goes, especially if the Angels start to fall out of it with the Rangers and the Astros, built to win. If they start to fall out of it, are they going to stick with that game plan still? That would make even less sense, I think. What I'm really interested in is finding out exactly what Mr. Trout means by he'll do anything to keep Ohtani in Anaheim. That I would love to know what that means, because what does anything mean exactly? You're going to take less money? You're gonna help him move into a home permanently? Like, what is that? I'll help you move. I don't know. Like, I'll take you out to dinner. I don't know what that means, and I would love to.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Let's pay attention to that as the season rolls along moving forward. Our final topic for Coast to Coast tonight, we're going to talk about that cross-time team. We're going to talk about the Los Angeles Dodgers, and there is a very interesting topic tonight with the addition of David Peralta. What an interesting outfield the Dodgers have. I mean, it's going to be a puzzle to determine what they go out with on opening day with. Obviously, Cody Bellinger heads out. Mookie Betts obviously is going to be their right fielder, but there is a whole bunch of other positions in the mix. Chris Taylor, Trace Thompson, James Outman are the players that were there last season. Then you have David Peralta, who was signed, and then Jason Hayward, Bradley Zimmer, and Steven Duggar are all in the mix as well. Some new additions. Spring training for the Dodgers is going to be fun, especially paying attention to that outfield. David Peralta obviously had some fantastic years in Arizona. Didn't really pan out when he was traded to the Rays. What's your thoughts about this addition of Peralta and this big puzzle piece going on in the outfield for Dodgers?
Yeah, I think the Peralta deal makes a lot of sense for them, given that up until that point, they were going with the spaghetti theory in outfield. Throw something at the wall and hope it sticks, because they were looking at Mookie Betts and then one massive question mark in Chavez Ravine, like Chris Taylor striking out more than 35%, Trace Thompson at 36.5%, like that. I understand in Major League Baseball we're more tolerant of the strikeout, but that's unacceptable. And then, of course, adding Outman, and then they were like, anybody, can you play in outfield? Do you have a 17-inch glove? Cool, come on over here. Jason Hayward, Bradley Zimmer, Steven Duggar, hey. maybe one of those will work. I read here on Major League Trade Rumors that Dave Roberts told Buster Olney that Hayward has a strong chance of making the club, and that's where they were before David Peralta. Does that settle the situation? I would argue, yeah, it does, but it's still a question mark. And as I'm speaking, obviously, as somebody who paid a lot of attention to the Blue Jays, if Bradley Zimmer is one of your solutions, especially on the offensive side of things, you're in rough shape. So I think they kind of had to sign David Peralta. It's not a bad signing by any means. It's a good one. I think he'll do well, but it was almost necessary at that point.
Yeah, according to Fangraphs, all of the projected WOBA for these outfielders that we mentioned, all three of the current players that were already on the Dodgers, Chris Taylor, now for the record, who also plays infield, 75% of his appearances are in the outfield, but he is a pretty solid utility player. I mean, Chris Taylor is just outstanding. But Chris Taylor, Trace Thompson, and James Outman all have a higher projected WOBA. And then David Peralta comes in fourth place with 304. That's interesting. And then you obviously see Hayward, Zimmer, Duggar fill out the bottom half of this. Zimmer obviously is not an offensive guy. He's there for defense. I think he took the hit when the universal DH came in, and you don't really need a defensive specialist anymore. That's why Cleveland, I think, took the ship, and Toronto obviously didn't finish out with him. Peralta will make the team. I am very interested if Hayward will find a spot there. I can't see anything else happening. I'm interested on the Trace Thompson, just like you mentioned as well, because he had some great seasons. He had 142 WRC plus last season, but he also has a career strikeout of 36.5%. And that's absolutely dreadful. So where does it work, right? And David Roberts, we have seen some interesting work with his bench in the past. Well, we've seen what he's done with the bench. Maybe he has a good plan, and you can't really doubt him, because year after year, this team is always close to 100 wins or over 100 wins, and they find themselves in the playoff race year after year. Very interested to pay attention to this outfield race. However, David Peralta, I think, is a huge and a fantastic addition for this Dodgers team, who is going to take a step back. Let's be honest. They're going to take some sort of step back, but is it a big enough step back where the Padres pass them? That is a huge question that we'll be tracking all season long. That was fun. Look at that. Second week of Coast to Coast done. We're going to keep bringing you Coast to Coast every week, because this is a great way to get every single division. We're going to get your big storylines. Now let's finish off this segment, this episode tonight, with the top 10 pitchers right now going into 2023. We have our first annual OBP consensus. And I love saying the word consensus, because there's a couple players on there where we did not have up and down. So I want to definitely get your thoughts on them. But let's go ahead and break them down. We want to start with number 10. And number 10, and I just noticed that I just see your list, not the consensus list. So let me pull that up real fast while I'm doing that. This is going to be a fun list. Let's just say that there was a player that you had at number 2 that I didn't even have listed, and then I was pretty upset that I forgot about him. So he definitely made the list. All right, let's start off with number 10. And I think number 10 is a really interesting one. Some people might say he's higher. I don't think you can make the argument that he doesn't belong there. However, that's just my thoughts. And that's Framber Valdez. I think Framber Valdez is going to be, he's obviously a fantastic. What he did in the World Series last year, in my opinion alone, deserves him in the top 10. However, he's had some great seasons over the last 2 years, especially 3.7 WAR last year, 2.82 ERA. He was just fantastic in his 31 games started. He's only 28 years old. There's more to come. We just saw Christian Javier get an extension from the Astros. I don't think we're going to see a big extension from Valdez because of his 28 years, but it could happen. Dana Brown, I don't think he's done yet for what they're going to do with this Houston Astros team. And Valdez might be one of those guys as well that stick around, but he makes our list at number 10. What's your thoughts about Valdez?
Yeah, he might be the best number 10 pitcher on any list you'll ever see. Right. Just a special talent, for the Houston Astros. Looking at that crisp 282 ERA. What impresses me most, though, is the over 200 innings pitched, which is almost a rarity now in Major League Baseball. And then he kind of matches that with 194 strikeouts. So 200 innings, 200 strikeouts is not a bad not a bad day's season's worth of work. Can he replicate that will be the question moving forward. And the projections look very good. He went 17-6 last season. Projections have him anywhere 13-9 to 15-7 with an ERA less than 3.3. This guy is going to be just as good next year. And the question for me really is, can he get even better? The projections say he'll be right around the same spot, but I mean, if he gets even better, watch out.
Yeah, I am super excited for this Houston Astros team this year. Obviously, a lot of question marks about the pitching staff of at least there's a big question. I would say a lot of question marks. There's a big question saying, what will they be without Justin Verlander? I think they'll be just fine. Let's just say that. I think they will be just fine. At number 9, let's talk about your Toronto Blue Jays. There's plenty. I think there's a couple names that you could add to this list. Kevin Gausman, honorable mention. However, number 9, we're going to give it to Alex Manoah. What a fantastic player for Alec here. I mean, you talk about your friend over at Jays from the Couch, the On Feck Circle, always loves this Alec Manoah. Steve Feck talking about his West Virginia roots. But yes, Alec Manoah, just a fantastic player. I love seeing the projections for him on Baseball Reference because they see him having basically a 1-to-1 inning pitch to strikeout, and that's one of my favorite things to pay attention to with pitchers. But last year, his actual stats, just under 200 innings pitched, 180 strikeouts. This guy is absolutely amazing. And the crazy thing about it, Shaun, and I know you know this, he is only 25 years old. Toronto is going to have to pay this guy a lot of money, and it'll be worth every single penny in the future.
Yeah, and I think probably the main reason why he's only in the 9th spot is just because it was his first kind of full season in the big leagues. 2021, he only pitched 111 innings. It's still 3.22 ERA. Thank you very much. But last season was kind of his coming out party, the All-Star game, making his first All-Star in his first full season. And then, of course, striking out the side, mic'd up. Like, this is not just a special talent on the mound, but this is a guy that, and obviously speaking from my perspective, as somebody who covers the Blue Jays, this is somebody who fans can really easily fall in love with. He's out on social media calling out Garrett Cole for sticky tack. He's out calling out MLB analysts for this, that, and the other thing, for making stupid comments. He'll rush to his teammates' aid to defend stupid comments made about them. He's a guy who will play with a lot of fire and energy. He's a bulldog and is somebody that I think is going to take Major League Baseball by storm, and much in the same way as a Jazz Chisholm, except on the pitching mound.
I completely feel in my mind that when we get to the second annual pitching rankings next year, Manoah will be in our top 5. And I don't think that that's going to be an issue at all. I think he's going to be he's going to have such a huge breakout year, or just have just as great of a season as he did this year, enough to be a big time all-star. We're going to be talking a lot about Alec Manoah this season. Let's talk about a player who led the American League in strikeouts last year, and that is Garrett Cole. He sits in our number 8 spot. Garrett Cole has had some interesting years with New York. Obviously, we know what he did in Houston in 2019. He had 326 strikeouts, which was absolutely insane. But he has now led the American League twice in strikeouts. Last season, he did it with 257, 200 innings pitched. I mean, he's 32 years old, and he is still putting up 200 plus innings. This guy is an absolute workhorse, and obviously the ace for the New York Yankees. Moving forward, you have to see what's next for him. I think we're going to continue to see him do some fantastic things for this squad. I think they're going to keep New York. He's going to keep New York in the running when he's up to pitch. Last season he was 13-8, had a 3.5 ERA, a little high compared to what we've seen from him in years past, but I think he'll figure that out again this year, especially I think with the defensive shifts going by. The shifts are going to be interesting, but I think Garrett Cole will be just fine. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's funny how when he first went to Houston and had that 2019 season where he put up 7.5 F WAR, and then promptly signed with New York and all of that stuff. It felt like he was like the best pitcher in baseball, and now he's might be the best pitcher in baseball that nobody talks about. It's
Right.
really interesting, we with DeGrom and Scherzer and Verlander getting all the headlines, and then of course the young guys coming up getting all the headlines, and Garrett Cole is almost kind of quietly going about being his dominant self, and of course as a Blue Jays fan that's like super friggin' annoying, but I mean, you got to give him his props. He's absolutely one of the best pitchers in baseball, probably the best strikeout pitcher in the American League, certainly. And so, you know, and what I think really gets me, I'm just looking at his velocity. 2013, when he broke in with the Pirates, 96.8 fastball velocity on average. Last season, 2022. So at age 22, 2013, his velocity just under 97. And in 2022, at age 31, his velocity went up by a full mile per hour. That to me is fascinating. And whether or not that has anything to do with sticky stuff or anything like that, I'm not going to get into that here and now because I don't think that's the place for it. I think Garrett Cole, this is about giving him the respect that he deserves. And he may come out this coming season, and have yet another monster season, which is good because the Yankees need him to, with all of the injuries that are happening to their rotation, and we haven't even played a game yet. So Garrett Cole, hats off. This will be the last time I speak so kindly of Garrett Cole.
I was going to ask you, how hard was that? How hard was that? Because you did a good job. You did a fantastic job.
I'm bleeding on the inside of my cheek.
Yeah, I bet. Let's move on to number 7 here. Max Scherzer sits at number 7.
Yeah.
Old timer. I mean, just doesn't age whatsoever. What he's doing on the mound is just incredible. 38 years old. Been in the league now 15 years, going on his year 16 season, second year with the Mets. Last year had 11-5 record, 145 innings pitched. I mean, it's just absolutely. I think you can make the argument, and I don't even know if it's an argument. I think this is facts now, that this was the contract that he signed with the Washington Nationals might be the best contract that any team has ever done with a pitcher. I mean, what he did for the Nationals was just absolutely incredible. And usually you see those long contracts and they kind of fade out at the end. And we're seeing that with Washington now, kind of with Strasburg and his injuries. But Scherzer worked through every single of those seasons, was fantastic, all the way until he was traded to the Dodgers in 2021, where he posted a 7-0 record for the Dodgers and got them all the way into the playoffs and the World Series that year. So, yes, Max Scherzer is incredible. I think that we are going to see another fantastic season from him. Projections state that he will go 172 strikeouts in only 151 innings. Again, that's one of my favorite stats to look at. And they think he's going to post an 11-6 record at age 38. How do the Mets in Max Scherzer look like as you sit him in the OPP rankings of number 7?
Yeah, it almost feels unfair that he's in the 7th spot, considering the resume that he has. I mean, drafted 3 rounds before Sandy Koufax. This guy has been in the league forever, and it's just, what he continues to do. I mean, we're like, just take one stat, just randomly looking here, strikeouts per 9 innings in 2019, 12.69. And then you're seeing that steadily kind of decline, but even still almost 11 per 9 innings. So he's still got it, which is just, as somebody who is started falling apart around the age 38. It just blows my mind. And the command as well, the ability to limit free passes. Projections for his ERA are just over 3, still at age 38. I mean, even if he doesn't pitch in 2023, he's still in the 7th spot on this list.
Yeah, absolutely insane. I cannot wait to watch Scherzer pitch this season. All right, let's move on to number 6. And I think this is an interesting one here. Number 6 is going to go to Jacob deGrom. Now, I can see many people say Jacob deGrom is the best pitcher in all of baseball. I would agree with you if he is healthy. And that is why I think we both moved him down on our list. That is a big reason why, at least in my opinion. There's also some other reasons, but Jacob deGrom, when he is healthy, yes, you can make the argument that he's one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. In 2021, when he was healthy, he posted a 1.08 ERA. In 2018, in his really is one of his last full seasons, he posted a 1.7 ERA. He hasn't pitched over 100 innings since 2019. Now, 2020, he would have got there, but we know what happened in 2020. But the last two seasons, he's had 92 innings and 64 innings, respectfully. Projections only give him at 101 innings pitched this year. So they're still projecting that he will not be fully healthy all the way through this year. I just want to see him get up and back to that 140 range at least. I'd love to see him get back to 180. I just don't think that's ever going to happen in his career again. But get him back in the 140, 150 inning pitch range, then we can talk about him moving up this list in my mind. However, until that happens, deGrom sits at number 6 on the list for first annual OBP top 10 pitchers list.
Yeah, I think when we've mentioned almost every pitcher we've mentioned thus far, we've talked about that 200 inning plateau, right? And I think that's incredibly important when you're talking about a staff ace, which is, when you were looking at a top 10 list, that's almost 10 staff aces. We're going to have an exception here coming up, but 9 aces are on this list, and that's kind of key, right? Somebody who can anchor that rotation and carry that rotation. And for me, obviously the health is the biggest question. But also when you combine that with the fact that he's 34, you don't tend to suddenly find major league top quality health at age 34. So the history of injuries scares me. So that's, I think, why, and as you said, that's why he is where he is. However, if he is healthy, don't look. What was his strikeout percentage last season? Just off the top of your head.
Oof. Man, it's got to be 24%.
42.7.
Wow.
So Jacob deGrom struck out 43% of batters. Like, that is insane. It's almost like I don't think I've ever seen a strikeout percentage that high. I can't remember that. So health is the key. Healthy. Right. That's just it. Right. And so the fact that I would not bet any kind of money that he's going to be healthy. So that's unfortunate because, man, he's got so much talent.
Yeah, if we saw a healthy Jacob deGrom last year, this list would look a lot different. He would probably sit in our number 1 spot, maybe number 2, maybe. But if he was healthy one of those last 2 years, that list would look a lot different. But we haven't seen him healthy since the 2020 season, a shortened season, and we haven't seen him in a full payload since 2019. Maybe that changes this year. Highly doubt it. But until then, he sits at number 6. Moving to number 5, you heard his name on the list last week as a batter. Well, this is a two-way player, Shohei Ohtani. He sits at number 5 and the top 10 pitchers list. Look, Shohei Ohtani is absolutely insane. Between the two-way players, 9.6 WAR last season. But let's talk about just his pitching in 2022. 15-9 record. He had a 2.33 ERA in 28 games pitched, 166 innings pitched, 219 strikeouts in 166 innings. That is unreal. That is unheard of in my mind. That usually it's like a really close to 1-to-1 ratio. This is outstanding. This is insane. Shohei Ohtani is doing amazing things on the mound. I mean, I almost feel bad for putting him at number 5 when we look at these stats and talk about it. He'll probably make us eat our words. But until then, because we put him on both lists, we didn't want to put him at the very top on both. However, I think we both can agree if we are having a top 10 overall, he'd be sitting at our number 1. Shohei Ohtani, number 5 in our top 10 pitchers list.
Yeah, and I feel at this point, there's only so much you can say about Shohei Ohtani that hasn't been said already. Just an unbelievable, exceptional talent. And the question will be, what are the Angels going to do with him? Are they going to ask him to pitch every 5th day to increase his workload? I can't imagine that they would be that insane, because you're risking a lot by doing that. So that will be the real kind of determining factor, I think, as far as where he ends up on this list at the end of the season. But as of right now, it's very tough to bet against him. Super, just every kind of possible, um, like I'm out of words when we're talking about this guy, but I want to see what the Angels are going to do with him, given the comments from Nevins earlier that we talked about.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what happens with Shohei Ohtani. I'm
Yeah.
excited to move to the West Coast because more of their games will be at relatively good hours for me to watch, and I don't have to worry about watching games that start at 10 o'clock at night, so I can pay attention to him pitching or batting, wherever the case will be. My eyes will be glued when he's up on the mound or up the bat. All right, number 4. This one is near and dear to my heart, as you know. Old Dominion's very own Justin Verlander. He sits at number 4 on our list. What he did last year was absolutely incredible. Again, talking about another old timer here, 39 years old. He's about to turn 40. He's turning 40 just in a few days, actually. He is going to be 40 years old in 2023. He came back from Tommy John surgery in 2022 and just went off. I mean, obviously, Cy Young winner, 18 wins. He had a 1.75 ERA. I don't think you can name another player who has had a better return from Tommy John surgery than Justin Verlander did in 2022. I don't think there is one. And that's why he sits at number 4 on our list. The longevity of this player is just absolutely amazing. I know we'll see a lot of Astro fans on here saying that he was awful in the offseason and the playoffs. So what? Don't care. What he's done in these seasons are just incredible. And we're going to see him do some amazing things, especially for all that money in New York with the Mets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not somebody who puts a whole lot of stock in the small sample size of a postseason. There's so much else that goes into somebody's performance there. What's interesting to me, though, is that almost 40 years old, coming off of Tommy John surgery, and he comes back and puts up a season like he did last year. It wasn't. I don't know how to say this other than it wasn't necessarily vintage Justin Verlander, but it was still friggin' good Justin Verlander. So you're starting to see that decline. But if you're going to decline, you want to decline like Justin Verlander is, because he's still, as obviously, what are we at here? Number 4, still the 4th best pitcher in all of baseball.
That's right. All right, number 3. I think this is going to be probably our most controversial pick of the list, in my opinion, and I think we're going to hear it out there too. However, I agree with you. This is the player that actually left off my list initially. When you sent me your list, I said, how did the hell did I miss Aaron Nola? So I redid my list, sent it back to you, and consensusly, this is where this happened. Aaron Nola sits at number 3 on our list of the OBP top 10 pitchers of 2023. Last year, 6.0 WAR. His record wasn't amazing, 11-13. Did have a 3.25 ERA in 32 games. But what he can do is just absolutely insane. I mean, we've seen some fantastic things from Aaron Nola, even in 2022. 205 innings pitched, an absolute workhorse. In those 205 innings, 235 strikeouts. He's had over 200 strikeouts in 4 of his last 5 seasons, and that 5th season is 2020, so he probably would have had it that year as well if it was a full year. He is a Mr. Reliable, if you will, in the last few seasons, and I think that's why we put him pretty high on our list at number 3, Shaun.
Oh, absolutely. If you're looking at the picture of stability, he might be it. Just the ability to, and we've kind of mentioned already, we put an emphasis here on guys who can pitch 200 innings and rack up the strikeouts like he can. So to me, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a guy who can, excuse me, do just that. He's healthy. And the ability to dominate when he dominates is it's a pretty special thing, and the ability to hold batters like last season. So this is what kind of bugs me about statistics and the baseball metrics, right? So the back of the baseball card numbers, you look at wins and losses, and he's like 11-13. Well, man, that's not very good at all. But the ability to hold a batter to like a 218 average, the ability to strike out 30%, the ability to hold home runs. So home runs per 9, under 1 last season. So doing all the right things and doing them well. I love me some Aaron Nola.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Aaron Nola is going to have another great season. Now, Philadelphia, as they come off their World Series trip, what will happen with this squad? Nola finally has that off his belt, at least that he's made it there. He's been there.
Mhm.
Now let's see what's next for this one. Number 2, Corbin Burns sits in the 2 spot. This is an interesting one as well. People might have him at number 1. We sit him at number 2 in this one. What he's done the last couple seasons has been absolutely incredible. Don't get me wrong. He led the National League in strikeouts last year with 243, had a 2.94 ERA with 12-8 record in 33 games started. Again, 202 innings pitched. Corbin Burns is another one of those workhorses. He's on a fantastic pitching rotation squad. And dare I say, let's bring it back to our NL West division preview here, Shaun. I stated that Corbin Burns will be traded this season, and I'm going to stand by it. I'm going to even put it in this top 10 conversation. Corbin Burns, number 2 on our list, but he's going to be number 2 for 2 teams this year. Not sure the other team will be a team to be named later.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking the same thing, like when we're looking at, he went 12-8 for the Brewers, and he won't be playing for the Brewers the full season, which is unfortunate for fans of the Brewers because he's a special, special talent. However, the reality of baseball is that stars tend to go other places sometimes. So enjoy him while you can, because he's going to give you a whole bunch to enjoy. The 2.94 ERA is projected at an ERA just over 3 next season. And what's interesting to me when I look at an ERA, I also looked at the fielding independent pitching, so the FIP, just to kind of take the defense out of there. And his FIP last season was indicated to me that his ERA is right on point where it should be. Next season, his FIP actually projects to be lower than his ERA. So he's doing everything he can control. One thing I'll be watching for, though, is his home run to fly ball rate last season was 14%. I'd like to see that come down to maybe his 2020 level of 6%. So if he can cut that in half, that would be just, icing on an already delicious cake.
Absolutely. Corbin Burns, let's see where you end up at the end of 2023. I don't think it's going to be with the Milwaukee Brewers. All right, we're at number 1. Before we finish off our list of the first annual OBP top 10 consensus pitchers of 2023, let's recap. At number 10, we had Framber Valdez from the Houston Astros. Number 9, Alek Manoah of the Toronto Blue Jays. Number 8, Garrett Cole of the New York Yankees. Number 7, Max Scherzer of the New York Mets. Number 6, Jacob deGrom of the now Texas Rangers. Number 5 sits Shohei Ohtani, the pitcher. At number 4, Justin Verlander of the now New York Mets. Number 3, Aaron Nola of the Philadelphia Phillies. And we just talked about number 2, Corbin Burns of the now, for right now, Milwaukee Brewers. And let's talk about number 1. And number 1, and I thought this was an easy pick in my mind, Sandy Alcantara. I thought he was just fantastic last year for the Marlins. I mean, you talk about workhorse, 228 innings. He led all of the National League in this one. He led the all major leagues in that one. He faced 886 batters last year. I mean, absolutely incredible. 207 strikeouts in that time. What he did, he threw 6 complete games. I mean, we talk about workhorses. He threw 6 complete. You just don't see that anymore. Sandy threw 6 of them. And that's just going to be something we've seen him throw 1 in 2021, 6 in 2022. I mean, are we going to get 5 more? We're going to get 11 from him this year? I don't see that happening, but it's always fun to dream, right? With obviously Pablo Lopez heading out, they bring in Johnny Cueto into the Miami Marlins bullpen. This is going to be an interesting rotation, if you will. But obviously, Sandy will lead the charge. Every time he's on the mound, he is must-watch TV. That is not going to change this season. It really makes you wonder why St. Louis didn't hold on to him in 2017 after all their needs and pitching. And then Miami's just done some fantastic things. But however, Sandy Alcantara, our number 1 for OBP top 10 pitchers of 2023.
And just out of curiosity, while you were talking there, I wanted to look up how many complete games there were in 2022. With and he obviously led the way with 6. And I wondered, to me, like, that has to be approaching the total for all of Major League Baseball. I was wrong. Framber Valdez on our list here had 3 of them. Nate Nathan Eovaldi had 2. Aaron Nola on our list had 2. And then, of course, there's a number of guys who had 1 complete game.
But second
And
place was 3, you said.
Exactly. And that's the real point here, right? Like, this guy, when we're talking about, we've said it multiple times on this show already, you need a workhorse in that spot, and he is living up to that. What is interesting to me is that the kind of the, I guess, the line on him was that he may actually end up to be a reliever, a 2-pitch kind of reliever, a good one, obviously, but he's kind of blown that out of the water completely. It's too bad that he'll be pitching for the Marlins again, because they're in that really incredibly tough division, but maybe it's a good thing. He can just go out there and pitch as well as he can, and keep doing what he's been doing. Is he going to be as dominant? Is he going to win another Cy Young Award? Maybe not. The projections have him taking a step back from where he was last year. His ERA at 2.28, now projected in the kind of mid 3s, low to mid 3s. So, is he going to be as dominant again? Who knows? However, he's the reigning Cy Young Award winner. You cannot bet against that, right? Yeah. So until somebody unseats him, he's the best pitcher in the National League.
There was a reason why Kim Nang and the Marlins front office stated that every pitcher was up for grabs except Sandy Alcantara. And the reason is because they knew that OBP was going to put them as number 1 on the top 10 rankings. Right. That's going to wrap it up for this episode of the OK Baseball Podcast, where the list, the talk, the news is more than just okay. It's fantastic. Have a good rest of your week, everyone. We'll see you back here for more episodes. We'll be back for our flagship episode on Wednesday nights with spring training kicking off. Look for more daily content on the YouTube page. Have a good rest of your week. And remember, you just have a good, fantastic time. Feel better about yourself, because at least you're not Rob Manfred. Talk soon. We'll see you back here again next time. Take care.